everybody, welcome to another episode of Nigeria to America. This is our second roundtable discussion, and as you can see on today's episode, we have guests with us as well. Today we have medical doctors on our panel, and they will be talking to us about their journey to the USA, studying the path to medical school, residency in the USA, and just giving tips for people who are looking to come and follow a similar path. So stay tuned and keep watching, and we hope you like this video. So starting with introductions, you guys know me. My name is Yowande, and then I have with me.
Hi, my name is Adora.
I'm Bimiliki.
Marian. Hi, this is Moya.
Thank you. So now that we know everybody's names, we're just going to run through and they'll tell us a bit more about their background. So Adora, tell us a bit more about you.
Hi.
And how you got here.
Yep, of course. So I did my high school in Nigeria, went to high school in Lagos, and then after that I did my undergrad in human biology at the University of Toronto, which is located in Canada. Then after that, I went to the University of Limerick for medical school, which is located in Ireland. And then I'm currently doing my pediatric residency in Illinois.
All right, thank you.
Well, I'm Nigerian to the boots, high school Nigeria, undergrad Nigeria. So I had my undergrad in Ife, Bafna Awolowo University. I studied medicine there. Then I worked like 2 years after graduation before I moved here.
And you were practicing as a doctor in
Oh
Nigeria,
yeah, I
right?
worked as a doctor in Nigeria.
So, yeah.
And what are you currently doing now?
I'm currently doing my master's in public health.
So I'm originally from Uganda, which is in East Africa, Kampala. Okay.
Yay.
Born there, did my high school there, then I went to Europe, Hungary, Budapest for my med school, Semmelweis University, for 6 years. And then I'm currently doing my pediatric residency in Illinois as well. Thank you, guys.
All right, so can any of you share like what's the path to being a medical doctor in the US from your experience? So it sounds like we're from all over. So some people did you did your medical school in Hungary, you did your medical school in Nigeria, you did your medical school in Ireland. So are you guys aware of like a typical path? So for someone who wanted to come from another country, like what are the options they would take to become a medical doctor in Nigeria? Anybody can go. A medical doctor in the US.
Well, it's the same path. That's like the nice thing about the US is that everyone has the same path to actually going to doing the residency.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a couple of exams that you have to do. You need to graduate med school. That's all. And then there are just a couple of exams that you have to do, pass these exams, and you apply into a system. And then if you get accepted for a job, then you end up working. That's like a very small summary
Yeah.
of what it is.
Mm-hmm. And then for those that may want to do med school here, you have to take another exam called the MCAT, which is I don't know what it stands for, but it's the exam that everyone has to take in order to enter med school. So the medical pathway, I guess, here is kind of different from other countries in the sense that you have to have done an undergrad. So you have to do an undergraduate degree for 4 years before you can attend med school, which is also 4 years. So my medical school was a graduate entry medical school. So that means that you have to have done an undergrad degree before attending this medical school. So I think that it's important for people to know, especially people who may have done undergrad here, to know that there is an alternative. You have to do the MCAT. You have to pass the MCAT very well. And then you have to then apply to the medical schools before you can get in and then do the 4 years. And like Marian said, then you have to do board exams while you're in med school. You have to pass all your board exams. And I guess the board exams, the scores you get kind of actually determines what residency you end up doing, because some residencies are more competitive than others and require higher scores. So that's also something to keep in mind when you're applying and going through this path. It's a really long, arduous process. It took me spent 8 or more years. Yeah.
And there's a lot of paperwork involved.
Yeah.
There's no limit there. A lot of paperwork.
When you say paperwork, like in terms of applications?
Oh yeah, as an international graduate, they have to verify your certificate.
Yeah.
You have to send in your transcript. And if you're from Nigeria, that takes a while. So yeah.
Yeah. But once you have all your papers with you, as soon as you send them in, it's a process, but it's not nothing's gonna come out of the blue. So you just need to do your research.
Yeah. Is there a typical time frame that you need to apply by for residency? Like you need to apply by the fall to meet the next fall, or do you take your board exams by a certain time to meet the
What's the
fall
cycle?
admissions? Yeah, what's the cycle like? What's the admissions matching cycle?
The matching. So I'm going to talk because I went to a 4-year program, so I can only speak on what it's like for a 4-year program. So by your first year, you have to have written the board exam called USMLE Step 1. If you want to apply for the match by the end of your
First year of med school?
yeah, in your first year of medical school. Now, I'm only talking about the 4-year programs. I can't speak for people who go to like 6-year programs. Maybe you can delve deeper on how the timeline will go.
Yeah.
But like by your first year, you have to write this board exam called the USMLE, and there's 3 steps to it. So you have to write step 1 by June ending of your first year. You have to have written step 1. This is if you want to match into a residency program right after med school. And then by your second year, I believe, you have to start writing the step 2, which there are 2 parts to step 2. There's step 2 CK and there's step 2 CS. Step 2 CS is an interactive exam, so you have like standardized patients where you go in and you do a clinical exam and they grade you on that. And then step 2 CK is a written exam that you do on a computer, and it's like clinical based, like how do you manage this versus how you manage that. So you have to finish all of this by your second year entering / 3rd year of medical school. Then, after that, by your 3rd year of medical school, you have to apply to residency programs. That's when you apply to residency. Am I correct?
About, yeah.
Yeah, around your 3rd year.
The beginning of your
fourth year. So by September 15th of by the beginning of your 4th year, you have to have submitted your application to apply for the match.
Yeah.
So I think the deadline is September 15th.
It's a start date.
It's the start date. Please submit your application by No, don't use it like, oh, it's a start date. You're not like an American grad.
Yeah,
like for American grads, they can submit their application whenever they want, and they'll still get lots of application, like lots of interviews. If you're an IMG, like let September 15th be your deadline. Like your application has to be in by September 15th, because if not, that really reduces the chance, like the number of interviews you get and things of that nature. So by September 15th, your application has to be in. And then in your 4th year is when you now do your interviews and you travel and go and do whatnot. And then March 15th or March something, it changes every year. But by like, I think this year was March 17th or something, that's match day. That's when you find out whether or not you matched into a residency program or not.
For those that don't know, what's an IMG?
Okay, so an IMG is an international medical graduate. It's pretty much anyone who didn't study medicine in the US.
Okay. And if you guys don't mind, what did you get your bachelor's in? So your undergrad?
I got mine in human biology, so it's really related to medicine.
Okay.
And I didn't do one.
Oh yes. So
I went straight
Explain
out
your
of high
program.
school into medical school, which is I think very common for these African countries. You don't do undergrad. So I went straight in. I think I finished high school in December, and then I went to Hungary to do what we call a pre-med course, which was just basically training us for the entry level exams for med school. So I did like 5 months of just doing biology, physics, chemistry again. And then I applied to med school. There are 4 med schools in Hungary, but 3 of them use the same exam. So you do 1 exam for all, and then you interview and you get in. You choose where you want to go. And then did 6 years there. It does help. So like when Adora is talking about like trying to do these exams at these times, it's not that you can't do them later. It just really helps with the focus of the subjects that you're doing at that time. So I decided I wanted to come to the US like 2 years in. And then secondly, I did some of the basic sciences in the USMLE Step 1 in my first 2 years. So I wasn't able to do the exam, I think, until after my 3rd year, because there was still one subject, pharmacology, that I hadn't yet done, that was tested on in the exam. And then, so I did my Step 1, I think, my 3rd year. Then my Step 2 I did after graduation, because you're trying to do the US exams, but you also still have med school to do.
That's so good.
So it's like you want to apply for residency in your 4th year, but you have to fly out to the US for interviews.
Yeah, I was going to ask how that worked out.
You have interviews, but you also have your classes you have to attend, you have your exams you have to do, so you have to really realize that you're making a commitment.
For your interviews, can it work with you to cluster all your interviews together so that way you're not having multiple trips to the US? So how does that work?
So, I mean, I personally interviewed after I graduated med school. So I had a year off before I started my residency. So during that year, I was looking for a place. But when they invite you to interview, for the most part, they'll give you dates to choose. And so you just need to, first of all, check your email so that you can reply and ask for certain dates that work for you. And then if you have like 5 programs sending you invites, you have to kind of plan your time and see when will I be in the US. If you haven't been to the US recently, you need to realize you need a visa. So you can't just say yes. Which is why you should apply by September 15th, because then you can plan for your interview in December and then start applying for your visa before then, because sometimes it takes more than a couple of weeks to get your visa.
Yeah.
So that's some stuff you need to think about.
Yeah, that visa thing is actually something that's really, really important. And I guess for me, like, because I'm also a Canadian citizen, it's not even something that I thought of, because I was just like, whatever, I'll just pack my bags and go up to America and do my interviews. But like what Marian said, like, unfortunately, not a lot of schools are very accommodating, because you have to also do your school's curriculum and do the US curriculum. So you have to keep that in mind. If you want to match on time, like, which is right after med school, you have to make sure that when you're doing your interviews, it has to be all at the same time. So if you're going to do them all in November, all in December, just make sure whenever you're getting those interviews, and like she said, always checking, like sometimes I'll literally be on my email, just checking, making sure, because immediately they send that email, they send it to like a lot of people, and then those dates go quickly. So you have to like make sure you get the date that you want, and then you cluster all your interviews around the same time. I was fortunate enough that when I ended up applying, I was in the US, so it was easier for me to move around for my interviews. It didn't cost a lot of money for me. And also, I was doing an MPH at that time, so I explained to them what was going on. I was like, hey, listen, I'm applying for residencies, I have some interviews, is it okay? Like, I'm gonna be missing some classes, like, I can't help it. So, if you don't see me, like, it is what it is, I'm still gonna go. And anyway, so I made sure that all my interviews, if I remember correctly, were all November, December. That's when I did all my interviews. And I made sure by December, I was done with my interviews. So that by January, I was free for like just school stuff. So you have to plan all your interviews and try and make sure they're all around the same time. So that way you're just getting all the travels, because it's exhausting to travel from one place to another, and all that stuff.
And you have to think it's always like 2 days.
Yeah.
Because it's a dinner the day before and then the actual interview.
Yeah.
And
Is
it's
it serious?
Yeah.
It is. You sit down with the fellow residents and they get to know you, because it's more than just your grades.
Yeah.
But
It's your
it's like a job
interaction.
interview.
It is.
It's definitely a job. Yeah.
It's a job, so that makes sense.
Question for you guys: what happens if you don't match? You just have to wait till the next
Try
year.
again.
Yeah.
You have to take any exams again.
If you haven't finished your exams, I recommend finishing them. But if you don't match, like,
Try again.
try again the next year, improve your application, look for research, do an MPH.
What tips do you have for getting into a good residency program? So are there things that you did that helped prepare you for that, apart from obviously going to med school?
I would say get a good score,
Yeah.
because you're in
med school?
the exams.
I'm
So it doesn't matter. I don't even think they care about your med school. You need a degree. But the reason there's this USMLE is the United States Medical Licensing Exam. The US students do it, you do it. That's where they kind of level you out.
Yeah, okay.
And the score that you get is good for 7 years. You can't change it. You can't go and retake it and try to make it better. And if you wait 7 years, then you've kind of been out for a bit long. So it's like you need to get your good scores. They're keen on research.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always good to get some research under your belt.
Yeah. Another thing about the USMLE is if you pass, you can't retake it. So like literally like what Marian said, you're stuck with that score. So make sure that once you take that exam,
So if you fail,
smash it. If you fail, you can retake it, but then it's not good if you
Pass
fail.
score.
It's like 195, which is
Also
not good.
It
Out of
depends.
300 and something.
Oh,
It depends on one's
Yeah.
exam too.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, it depends on the exam. Yeah. But like once you pass, don't do like, oh, I just want to pass. Pass with a good score. No, and a good score is like, I would say for an IMG, it's like 210 and above.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to get a decent, if you even want to match, just a 210 and above will match you hopefully into a program. Might not be a competitive like a John Hopkins or something, but will definitely match you into a community, what we call community programs. Will match you into a program, but like don't do that. You want to just write the exam and do it for writing's sake, because if you fail that exam, it's going to be hard. Once they see a fail as an IMG, it's another strike against you. So you have to make sure that your application is like as top notch as you can do it. Like do all your exams on time. Make sure you pass like well enough. And then if you have like additional stuff like research, they'll like that, but I don't think you necessarily have
Not
to have it.
necessarily, but like research is good, being more active, doing more than. America is big on doing more than just going to
Yeah.
school, but then they make you go to school all the time. It's like, okay,
But like, yeah, being involved in communities, doing like,
Yeah.
being like part of your student government
Yeah.
or doing like volunteer work.
Being well-rounded.
Yeah, well-rounded people is what they're looking for. You need to have personality. Part of your application is a letter of recommendation.
Yeah.
3 is the minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Good
need
job.
to, yeah,
Good job.
you need to form relationships with people throughout your medical career in fields that you're interested in, because they need to write a letter of recommendation for you.
And another thing, just piggybacking on that letter of recommendation, I advise you doing what we call electives in at least the United States. So an elective is basically like you have like maybe a 4-week block or whatever where you can go into a school or a residency program in the US and kind of audition. So you're basically auditioning for a role. So you're just doing like, if you want to go into internal medicine, you apply to the program, and then for those 4 weeks, you're basically like a resident. Like you're called a
Actually, know
sub-intern.
someone that did that
Mhm.
recently.
Yeah.
actually,
So you could,
from Nigeria.
yeah, so they like that. Like some programs are like, they would like you to have US clinical experience, and that's what they mean. Like if you have like observerships, which is when you're shadowing doctors in the US, if you have an elective, they really like that too, because they want to see that you've tried to, like, you know, assimilate in the system. You don't have to do it in the US. I think some programs consider Europe as a US, like they consider that as clinical experience. So I was lucky enough that I went to school in Europe. So they considered my whole 2 years that I was doing my clinical stuff as like clinical experience too. So that's also important to have. And I don't think a lot of people realize that that's something that you have to have in your application as well.
It does help for sure. It's not easy to get.
It's not easy
And
to
you
get.
might pay like $200 for the application
Yeah.
and then $300 per week.
Yeah,
For weeks.
there was one that I paid $1,000.
To do what?
Oh,
Just to pay them.
You
Yeah,
pay
you
them.
pay them so that
Oh.
you can.
Yeah,
It's like doing a
Yeah.
study abroad in a hospital.
$1,000 for the 4 weeks I stayed with them.
What?
But it looks really good. On
It
your
looks, yeah, it
application.
looks good on your application. So you have to do what you gotta
This
do.
doctor life.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to
Yeah.
change the trajectory. So why did you guys choose to come to the US? And I'm going to start with you lately because you switched from, you were practicing in Nigeria and then now you get sent an FPH. So why did you choose to come to America? And also probably touch on why NPH as opposed to trying to practice here in America.
Okay, so truth be told, okay, for me, I didn't decide early. I didn't decide I wanted to practice here early. I was the typical, I'm staying in Nigeria, let's fix Nigeria health system kind of guy. But you know, when I worked for a year or two, then I knew, okay, it's not really, okay, for a lot of people, welfare is important, welfare is not really good. But then, more importantly, there's nothing like practicing in a place where you have all the facilities at your disposal. You understand that you're thinking. So that was, for me, that was when I decided that, guy, no, Nigeria is not it. Let's come here, you know. And like, I like how they walked through the application process for residency. If you are coming from Nigeria, it's similar, but you know, it has a Nigerian touch. First of all, it's not very likely. If you don't decide quick, it's not very likely that you'll be able to write any of the steps in medical school. Except you decide from like maybe level 100 or 200, because as you go in medical school, it becomes tougher and it becomes more engaging. It gives you don't really have time to prepare for the exams. The best time for us will really be 300, 400 level, because that's when we do like the basic medicals, anatomy, physiology, and the likes. But at that time, a lot of people are still trying to tell you are not a doctor yet. So there are a lot of things you are thinking about rather than writing the steps. That's the first thing. So for most of us, we usually decide after graduation or very close to graduation, then begin to write the exams. But for a lot of people, it's after graduation. And at that point, then you begin to, you're working most of it. Of course, you'll be working. So you want to match work with reading, and the reading is a lot. And I tell you, of course, it's medicine in Nigeria, but if you are preparing for the steps here, you are studying medicine all over again. You practically have to read from the scratch all over again. So, okay, so like I said, the reason why I decided to switch for me is the fact that number one, the welfare, number two, the fact that I wanted to practice in the best of places. So I didn't decide early. So I thought to myself, okay, now the average way to go about it is you write step one. You can write step one you don't have to come here to write step one. You can write it in Ghana and the likes. But for step two, you have to come here, you understand? And Nigerian immigration system, the way they do visas, my dear, you have every legitimate reason to be here, but they will not give you a visa. So the safest thing most of the time is to write the exams when you're here. So you want to look for a way to be here. Several people come visiting and stay back, 101 things. But for me, I just decided, guys, let's do masters in public health. It's not a bad thing, you know. I always liked public health, anyways. So I said, okay, let's do a masters in public health. And I decide to just do licensing exam. But talk is cheap. I'll just say that talk is cheap. It's easy to say, but
Because the master's program is also
it's engaging. It's
Yeah.
engaging, you know. It's engaging. So
So what were your challenges coming to the US as an international student? And also, like, I think you're kind of already touched on it, but if there are more things I want to talk
Okay.
about.
well, the challenge is, the first challenge for me is immigrations. You see, getting a visa is the rate limiting step. You don't get a visa, you're going nowhere. So the first thing, you want to get a visa. When you get a visa, you see every other thing come into place. There's funding, so you have to think about money. It's expensive. It's expensive for you to, for someone like me who came in for a master's in public health. So I have to pay my school fees, and then I have to also pay for the exams and pay for all the paperwork. And in Nigeria, you see paperwork. See, I mentioned paperwork before. Paperwork is not easy to get. You have to lobby and you have to beg and you have to go there and grovel. And now that you're here, it's quite difficult to make things happen in Nigeria.
So what paperwork do you need that you did not get for your master's?
No, not for my master's. I'm talking about for residency. I'm taking both of them at the same time. No, for masters. Masters was good. The only challenge, like I said, is getting the visa and funding. Those are the two things for masters.
No, but you mentioned, so for residency, what paperwork do you need to get in?
Yeah, you need your transcripts, you need your certificates. Now, for people who studied in good schools,
What do you mean?
it's a snap of a finger. But if you studied in an average Nigerian school, paperwork is it's a big thing. You have to go there and you have to push and push. I've been trying to get out my transcript for over a month now.
Well, you got that for your master's, though, right?
I got that for
Send
my
directly
master's.
to the
They
school.
sent it to the school,
to
so I have to
send
make
it.
them
I
send
forgot
it
about
again.
the official
So you have to think about
transcript.
ASU strike. When ASU is on strike, no transcript. If ASU is not on strike, you have to think about NASU. When NASU is on strike, there's no transcript. They have to think about the person in the transcript office being in love with you. If he or she is not in love with you, you still not get a
That's the thing they
transcript.
have your request
You know,
for
so
transcript.
yeah, so that's why I said it's a lot of paperwork and so forth. I think that's basically for me from Nigeria. You want to start way early. I'm ready to spend plenty money.
So speaking about that's a segue to the next question. So speaking about spending money,
Okay.
can you estimate like how much it'll cost? What the cost indication is for someone who's looking? So for you, someone who's looking to go to come here, do the board exams, and do an MPH or do a master's in something else while studying for the board exams.
Well, it varies for different strokes for different folks. If you are coming for a master's, if you can get funding before you come. If you don't get before you come, if you can get after you come. Because again, it's so for that, I'm sure it's thousands of dollars, I tell you.
How much do the board exams cost? Do you guys have an idea?
1,000?
First step is if you do it in the US, it's like 800.
For
Then if you
step
do it,
one.
step one. If you do it in Europe, you need to pay extra for the country you're in, so 200 plus 1,000. First you need to register. So you register, that's like what, almost like 1,000.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
That's
1,000. You need to register to be part
That's
of the
registration.
ECMFG, which is like
ECMFG.
the commission that helps foreign graduates like get all their exams in order. It has all your like.
Is that a one-time registration?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. How much is that? On
About
average?
1,000, I think. It's hard.
a lot of
It's a lot. So it's 1,000 to register, 1,000 for step one just to take the exam, but you need to think about the study material.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh,
Child.
UWorld, like, you want to pay for UWorld? You look at $500.
Yeah, question banks. You need to think about
Question
question
banks.
banks if you want to do like extra online courses, that, to like.
Oh,
But it's
like
like-
Kaplan,
Yeah, because it's like you go.
$9,000.
As he said, it's like.
what? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes.
So we're looking at tens of thousands of dollars
Yes.
for
Just
the
to
board
get
exams.
in.
Just to do exam.
And
Just to
it's
write.
It's four exams.
It's
And
like,
then therefore, you have to write. Woo.
so it's like 3 before residency, and I've looked at this. It's like for just a 3 before residency was a good 5,000, and that was just the exams, not the flights that you took to come and do the exams
Yeah.
here, not the hotel you stayed at,
Yeah.
not the courses you wanted to take, not
The
the
cost for
question banks.
observerships and electives.
Yeah, not the cost for observership. You like this is
No,
just the exam.
this is
like
just
$5,000. You're
Okay,
just know
so
that you're not.
How much of that was as a result of you coming as international? So for instance, if I come in, do biology pre-med here as an international student, obviously I'll pay for my undergrad and then medical school. So how much of that came as a factor of you doing medical school outside of America?
The only part that's different is you're registering for the Foreign Graduate Commission thing.
Okay.
That's like that 1,000, the first one I mentioned, and then the extra 200 for if you do your exam in Ghana. If you do your exam, I did one of my exams in like Switzerland. Then you pay that extra. So if you're in the US, you pay 800. But
It's still the same amount.
still
I feel like
okay.
maybe like 1,000 less than what we pay, but they still have to pay a lot of money to write these exams too.
Yeah, doctor is expensive, guys.
It is. That's why they're all
It's
in
not
debt.
just a
yeah, like
And then, coming from outside, you have to do all the observerships. And you have to pay a lot of money.
Yeah. So it's not a cheap, like if you're going to invest, know
It's
that you're
bouncy.
investing.
time and money.
It's
Think
a lot of
about
time
it.
and money. So yeah.
So we didn't just land here.
No, it was something that was like planned. You have to like be planning like when you're writing. I remember when I was writing step 1, step 2, my dad was like, I was just cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. You have to come here and write your step 2, the like clinical exam. You have to be in the US. Like you can't take that anywhere else. You have to come physically to the US and you have to pay for your flight. So I remember I paid like over $1,000 to fly in. I only spent 2 days here. Wrote my exam
That's
and went
from
back the next day.
Ireland, right?
Yeah. And then wrote my exam and went back.
And only 5 places in the US you can do that one, and it's like LA.
Yeah.
places.
Yeah, LA, Chicago,
New York.
Philly, Texas, or something. It's
Not
like
cheap places.
it's not cheap places that they put where you can write this exam.
So question, do you guys know if there are like any boards or foundations that offer like funding or scholarships, some sort of like grants to help
Anything.
fund some of these exams?
The banks.
Those are
Loans, right?
No, not
Like
to my
mine.
knowledge.
Yeah, not to like honestly, you just have to have family support. That's mainly the thing that even got me through. Was thank God my parents were able to help me, right? Like pay for these exams. If not, I wouldn't have written any of them. Like they're so expensive. I was just swiping credit cards up and down. That's it.
And if you want to sponsor yourself, you must be ready to work.
Yeah.
Work. Save money and write your exams.
All our rich people in Africa. Help us.
So those are
Help
doctors.
me, help
Yeah, could be
me.
helping us. Oh, okay.
Wow.
So speaking about like your schools, how did you guys apply for those of you who are in residency, or even for you like who's in your masters, how did you find your program? How did you select it? I know you guys are matched for residence, so it's not like you necessarily selected it, but then you had to apply. So how did you decide when to apply to?
Well, there's this website called FREIDA, and I suggest everyone use it as an
Can you
IMG.
spell it
How do
out?
you spell that?
FRIEDA
Yeah.
or FR. It's
EI.
EI, one of them, but it's FREIDA.
We'll find it.
Yeah, go on it because literally what I did was open an Excel sheet and just already know that this is going to be labor intensive. Open an Excel sheet. What I did was I had an Excel sheet and I had FREIDA and I put name of the program, location, ID. Then I had one for step 1 minimum score because they put it on the FREIDA. I'm not applying to somewhere that accepts 240 and I'm here with my lonely 210. No, it's a waste of your money. I just want to be donating money to them. Then I had their step 1 minimum score. Then I had their step 2 minimum score. And then I had whether or not percentage of IMGs. It matters.
And
You
all
have
this is on FREIDA?
It's all on FREIDA. And not only is it on FREIDA, you go to the website. After you find all of these, like you can select it based on like specialties or location. I did mine based on specialty. So like for example, for pediatrics, I went through every single state and every single residency program. And I looked at all their requirements.
Very serious.
And then if they said they're IMG friendly, I don't trust you. So I go on their website and I look at what kind of IMGs do you accept. Because some of them only accept people from the Caribbean. So if I go there and everyone's from the Caribbean, I'm not applying. So it's going to be very unlikely that you'll be chosen. So I would pick programs where if they said they're IMG friendly, some of them say they're IMG friendly, you go there, you see everyone there went to med school in the US. Obviously you're not IMG friendly because why is everyone from the US?
Maybe IMGs that went to school in the US for undergrad?
No,
That's
an
That's an
IMG has to have studied abroad
Outside.
For medical school.
for medical school. That's the definition.
I see.
So and then you have to look at, do they sponsor visa?
Oh,
To work here, you gotta get a visa. So you have to look at the kind of visa they sponsor.
good.
What visa do you guys
Yeah,
get for
what's that?
residency?
How does that work?
So you can do the J1 or you can do an H1B. Those are the two
Oh,
It's
visas.
like
that they'll-
real work.
Yeah, so those are the two visas that they will offer. So you have to look at the programs and also see what kind of visas they offer. Some of them will say that they accept IMGs, but then they only accept US citizens who are IMGs.
What does that mean?
So they're US citizens
That
who
went abroad.
studied abroad,
I
so they don't give visas.
I see.
So that's another thing. So you have to. So like that was literally my Excel spreadsheet. I had it for every program. If I met your requirements, I'll put you on my list, and that's how I started choosing who I was going to apply to. And then if they gave a visa, J1, I think, because most of them give J1s, but if you want an H1B, you have to have written step 3.
That's a whole other exam.
That's a whole another exam that's like $800.
Would you be willing to share your spreadsheets?
No, like anybody applies, like honestly, I share it with them. I'm like, like when my brother was applying, I was like, this is how I made my spreadsheet. This is how I did it. It was the only way to keep track. Because like, I'm not going to waste my time and money. There's some website, like there's some people that offer services to like help you streamline, but I don't think it's as good as you doing it yourself. You going on the website, you reading the requirements, you seeing for your eyes. Because some of them will be like, oh, we don't accept people who have more than 3 years post-graduation. Would you apply if you're like your post-grad 5 years? Like maybe you might, they may take you, have an excellent step score, but like I'm not wasting my money, so I didn't. And so that's how I did it. You just have to be, the thing about America is you have to think 10 years ahead. You can't be doing things instantly. Oh, you wake up this morning, say you're going to go and apply. Like you have to be thinking like far ahead. So that's why I was like, I opened an Excel spreadsheet, the specialties I was applying to, and I put all the names of the program. So that way when it came time to like actually applying, I was just copying and pasting. Like I'll just copy and paste the program's ID code and then apply and send my application and stuff like that. Yeah. I was very thorough.
Last question. So the common denominator here is that we're all in the US. Why did you guys choose to come to the US and not another country for a residency? Like Canada or even Ireland. So why did you stay there? Was there any particular reason that played into your decision?
Yeah. Ireland don't want me. JK. So you have to also keep in mind that when you go to med school, and make sure that they accept international, like people without citizenship of that country, make sure they accept them into their residencies. Unfortunately, Ireland puts non-Irish residents or citizens at the bottom of their selection pool. So for me, honestly, also Ireland was a small country. Didn't want to, it was a great place to do med school, but like in terms of like advancements in medicine, America for me was where it's at. I was like, if I want to get the top training, I wanted to go to America. It's something I've always dreamt of, so I applied.
Anybody else?
I chose America because, so I'm open to traveling the whole world. That's what I want to do. But then the way America works is that in order to practice medicine here, you have to do your residency here. It doesn't matter if you've been a doctor in Uganda for 20 years and you're head of your department. If you want to get a job here, you want to practice medicine here, touch people and help them, you need to do your residency here. And that's why I just decided to start off my career here. And if I like it, I stay. If I don't, I leave. That was my mentality when I first applied.
So I was giving yourself options.
Yeah.
Giving myself options with America being one of them. So it just made more, because I could have gone to the UK, I could have gone to Australia. They don't know about Ireland.
It's good that you didn't waste your time.
But if 10 years down the line I decide, I want to move to the US, it's like, then I'm not going to do residency again. So I decided just start off here and then take it.
Actually, before we go to Lakewood, why did you guys choose medical school in Ireland and Hungary?
I chose med school in Ireland for a variety of reasons. Firstly, I applied broadly. So when I was applying to med school, it was right after undergrad. I did not want to waste a year. Whatever. I didn't want to, in my mind I was like, I don't want to waste a year. So I applied to Canada, applied to the US, I applied to the Caribbean, and I applied to Ireland. I applied everywhere, I applied broadly. So fortunately for me, I got Ireland and then I got the Caribbean. Unfortunately, I didn't get the US at that time. So then for me it was like debating, like, where do I go? I know the Caribbean really prepares you for like going into the US and everything. But then for me, like, I kind of also wanted, like, when else will I go to Ireland? Like, never. There's no, like, I can go to Jamaica anytime I want or Grenada. You know what I'm saying? You could, like, when I'm making the big bucks. But when you're making money, you can always travel there. But I was like, nothing else would ever take me to Ireland. And then my dad's like really into research, so he was Googling and Googling. He's like, look, Atora, 70% of doctors take their children to Ireland. So why shouldn't you go to Ireland? So that's how I ended up there.
Okay.
That's
Yeah, well, Hungary for me it just made sense. So I got to do high school and go straight into med school. not do undergrad, I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't need to waste time people didn't waste time, I just didn't want to do that. So I went straight into that. Hungary was cheaper than the US. So I was thinking I wanted to leave Uganda. So it was the UK, English speaking, UK, Australia, the US. I even did my SATs. Like I had thought about the US, but then I was like 4 years and 4, that's 8. I could do 6 years and be done. So it was cheaper in Hungary. Med school, right now, the med school I went to, it's $9,000 per semester. When I went, it was 6. So I paid, was it 6 or 8? 8,000, and now it's like, yeah, right, and now it's like 16,000 a year.
Wow.
That is a lot of money, but it's way cheaper than here.
Yeah.
Way cheaper than the UK. And Australia, I had to do like an undergrad for 3 years before I could go to med school. I did research. So Hungary was cheap in that sense. It's cheap to live there. Apartments are not that expensive. Now, maybe, I paid 400 euros for my 1-bedroom apartment. I had a balcony. I had like separate rooms. It wasn't a studio. It was only 400 euros per month. Food was cheap. It was in English. So for me, it just made sense. I didn't struggle after. I just went to study in English. But one thing you have to think about is that medicine is about interacting with people. So I had to, as much as my school was in English, I had to learn some amount of Hungarian in order to further my studies. So I don't speak it fluently, but I can ask you where the pain is. You know? So I had to think about that. But there are places like that I didn't know. So I knew Hungary existed. I didn't know Poland offers the same program. Like there are different places in Europe that will give you a nice EU degree, and that's the thing. I did get an EU degree, so I could practice anywhere in the European Union. No questions asked. This is my degree, and as long as they want me, they can take me. I wouldn't have to do extra exams. The UK, I would have to do an exam based on where I was born, not where I went to med school. So they don't care that I went to med school in Hungary. You do a medical licensing exam in the UK just because I was born in Uganda. And I said no, because in the US we're all doing the same exam, and this was so much more fair.
That's just piggybacking. That's actually why I also chose Ireland, because I was like, okay, if I go to the Caribbean and I don't match, then I'm stuck with this MD degree and I can't do anything. But in Europe, I could practice anywhere with my degree, as long as it was an English-speaking country, except for UK. But except for the UK, unfortunately, because of where we were born, we couldn't practice. But the reason why I also went there is because I could go anywhere else in Europe and I could do my residency there. So that's also because I was like, it gives me more options than being stuck with an MD degree for the Caribbean if I don't match, and then just looking at it. Yeah.
And then lately for you, why did you choose to come to the US for masters and also obviously for med school?
Okay, why I chose to come to the US for masters? Well, it's personal. Yeah, I've always loved the US, And when I decided I was going to leave Nigeria, it was either US or UK, and I think I preferred US because I believe that it's easier to have a career advancement here in the US relative to the UK. It's not like it's not possible in the UK, but I think it's relatively easier here. And I think coming to the US, you're on a level playing ground. You can compete almost equally with people here. Yeah, so it was a no-brainer for me.
Makes sense. So with that being said, we've come to the end of this episode. There's another episode on part 2 of Now That They're in America. We're going to learn about their experiences and challenges as an international medical professional, medical doctor. Medical doctor. So stay tuned and we hope you enjoy this episode.